Matthew 19:26, King James Version. But Jesus beheld them and said unto them, with men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible.
As we wrap up Black History Month, even though Black History is 365, today I'm excited to celebrate someone who is the embodiment of living Black history. Dr. Mae Jamison, she did not just break barriers, she was literally launched into the history books. In 1992, she became the first Black woman to go to space. But Dr. Jamison isn't only an astronaut, she's also a medical doctor who conducted extensive scientific research aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour. Dr. Mae Jamison joins me now. Dr. Jamison, I know you have been inspiring girls to follow in your footsteps through organizations like Girls Inc., a work that's near and dear to my heart. And I know this because a 12-year-old girl in North Omaha, Nebraska, was attending a Girls Inc. event when she realized she was sitting at the same table with the first Black woman in space. When she heard you talking about seeing Earth out your window on the space shuttle, and that little girl would be me. So I wanted to thank you for that. I read that growing up, you watched NASA missions, actually, and knowing that you would go into space one day. And I think that's profound. Like, how did you know that that's what you were doing?
So I just need to say that sometimes people want to tell stories as though they only have one arc. What I knew is I wanted to go into space. I was intending to be a scientist. I was intending to explore and be creative and to make a difference in this world. And I think that what's really exciting about your segment, Living Black History, that it's not about just sort of enumerating out those things that have happened or what people have done, but it's really, what do you do with your place at the table? How do you continue to build on that history to move it forward?
It's such an important point. Guy Bluford, as you know, was the first African-American to go into space, and he said that he made it his mission to help others get there. So far, NASA has sent 15 Black Americans to space, but that's 15 out of 360. And so in terms of what we are doing now, how are you helping others follow in your footsteps?
So I don't think it's about following the footsteps. It's about building a legacy. The work that I do now is really about how do we expand who's involved in space exploration, who gets a chance to not just go there, but determine how it's used on Earth. So I was literally in Nairobi earlier this month. We held a program called Nexus Nairobi, When Space, Purpose, and Culture Collide. It was about making sure that we expanded what we do in space. I have the good fortune of being the person who led a team who won this incredible Geek Prize of the Year 10 years ago called 100-Year Starship. It was about how do we make sure that we get people the capabilities for human interstellar flight. Why is this important? Because so much of what's going on in the world today is being determined right now. What's going to happen in the future is being determined right now by the people who are involved. People think about space and you think of it as like, it's really cool, people got to go up. But that's not the issue. That's not the only issue. The issue is, are we using it to increase agriculture? Are we using it to help with medicine? Are we using it to look at roadmaps and weather and all of those issues? Address the climate crisis, all of those issues. And it's so really important for me that it's not about people following in my footsteps, but they're creating a path. And how do I build that path forward? So that's what I'm excited about as we talk about living Black history. And I should remind you, yes, I was a medical doctor, but I was also an African Studies major, African-American Studies. And so when I went up into space, it wasn't only I was the first Black woman. As hard as it is to believe, I was the first woman of color in the entire world to go up, which really made no sense.
Oh my goodness.
After all those years, it made no sense.
The first woman of color in the world. Dr. Jamison, when you talk about that you were also an African Studies professor, and we talk about this history, and it strikes me that we are celebrating Black History Month, having this series while people are literally fighting not to be able to teach this history in schools all across this country, in urban and rural areas. You have talked about how you were deeply affected by the death of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Do you ever worry that Dr. King's story, as well as your story and the story of so many other trailblazers in our communities, will be lost?
So the stories aren't lost as long as we continue to talk about it. And the stories aren't lost as long as we continue to move the path forward. So when I think again about Black history, it is a history. It is a people who have contributed to every sphere of life in this country, in this world, and have moved the world forward. The angst that we see now is really about people coming to grips with a reality that is different from the reality that they'd like to believe. That it's a reality that's very powerful, that's important to the United States, that's important to the world.
Dr. Mae Jamison, I cannot think of a better person to close out this series this month. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
And thank you at home for watching Simone on this Sunday. I'm Simone Sanders Townsend, and you can catch me right here on MSNBC weekends at 4 p.m. Eastern and anytime over on the Peacock. We have new episodes on the MSNBC Hub every Monday. And even though our Living Black History series is over, don't worry, because Politics Nation with the great Reverend Al Sharpton, it starts right after this break, and he is living Black history.
Tremendous segment. Dr. Mae Jamison, genius, first woman of color to go into space in the entire planet. Amazing. First woman of color on the entire planet, from the entire planet, to go into space. Today is Sunday, February 26, 2023. All things are possible with God.